Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. Waiting to be profiled is author Andre Soares and designer Deanna Hamro. Author Andre Soares was born and raised in Rio de Janeiro, Brazil. He came to Los Angeles to attend Loyola Marymount, and I guess you were going to start a career in writing.
Yeah, I was taking screenwriting at
Were
Loyola
you?
Marymount, yes.
And how did that work out?
Okay for a student, but not in the real world. And I thought, I like to write, still do, and I thought of writing a book.
So while you were writing your screenplays, were you actually working at translating? Because you have a business of translating
yes.
business.
But when I was at Loyola, all I did was study.
Oh,
so yeah, I was just going to school. After I left school, graduated, then I began working as a translator.
Oh, then did you work for a company?
No.
You just started your own?
Pretty much.
How do you do that? What kind of skills do you need for that?
Just be a good writer and be good with
that's interesting.
the English language and Portuguese language is what I do.
Oh, you speak you translate only Portuguese?
English to Portuguese.
And why do you need the writing skills?
Because when you translate, you don't just copy what's in the original. You have to adapt it to the language where it's going to.
How do you get clients? Who do you work for when you're doing translating?
It's different clients, usually American companies that do business in Brazil.
And so how do they find you?
Word of mouth.
Is that right?
Yeah.
So when you were actually translating, do you have a translating business?
Yes.
Do you translate other languages?
No, just pretty much English to Portuguese.
Oh,
it's a very small company, pretty much myself, I have one partner, but that's pretty much it. And that was a good way to make some money while I was working on the Ramon Navarro book.
What about the confidentiality of translating? Do you ever get into any problems like that? Do you have to sign agreements or?
No. They just give me. It's usually marketing materials that I translate. And
you actually have to write them. You don't do like voice translations.
No.
Oh,
it's
that's
text.
what I thought you did. Voice translations.
No. I've done that too, actually, but a long time ago. But the business I'm in is pretty much writing.
Oh.
It's written texts for the Brazilian market.
I see. So, did you do anything in show business translation?
Actually, I worked for Fox for some time. They have they used to have at least a cable channel in Brazil, and I did some translations for them.
I see. So, did that give you any kind of feel for Ramon Navarro for this Beyond Paradise book?
Well, actually, I began working on the book around the same time I began working on the translations. So it was just a coincidence. One did not lead to the other. No.
So screenplays were not successful.
No, unfortunately.
Maybe now that you've written a book.
True. Yes. Who knows? Future. Yes.
Do you think you could take them out and do something with them?
Well, it'd be nice to have this book turned into a movie, and I'm working on a screenplay based on Ramon Navarro's life. I mean, the book that I've written.
All right, so this is St. Martin's Press.
Yes.
And it's called Beyond Paradise, the life of Ramon Navarro, who was a silent screen star. Why Navarro?
This was in 1997 when I began working on this. And at the time, there hadn't been any books on Navarro. And I thought he was an interesting character because he was a huge film star. He was a Mexican immigrant who made good here in the States, became very famous, very wealthy. And there was a drama, the fact that he was gay and he was very Catholic. and there was tragedy.
This was all what you knew about him.
He was killed too.
So you had like this really big picture of him.
Yes.
And did you see a lot of his movies?
Pretty much every single movie that's available I saw.
And did you go to that silent film cinema on Fairfax where it used to be?
Yes, and they had a film festival there. It was an MGM film festival 7 years ago or something. And they showed The Pagan with Navarro. And in The Pagan, Navarro sings. And he was a very natural performer. And
I'm going to show just this picture while you're still talking.
Yes, and I really enjoyed
this is
seeing
his
him.
picture, and then this is when he was singing. Is this?
No, this is a previous movie. That's where The Pavement Ends. But The Pagan is similar to that one.
But he was
more
very
lighthearted.
handsome. Was he in competition with Rudolph Valentino?
In the beginning, he was, even though they were very different types.
So here were these two screen stars, both Latin descent.
Right, and the studio, Metro, tried to sell Navarro as a Latin lover along the lines of Valentino, but Navarro was very different.
How was he different?
Well, Valentino was very sexual, very sensual. He would rape sometimes his leading ladies. Navarro would never do that in his films. He was very soft, mild-mannered, very boyish.
I mean, the way he was directed, the way they came across on film.
And also the way Navarro was as a character in person.
In person, too?
Yes. He was not the way Valentino was, even though Valentino wasn't quite the ladies' man that he was on screen.
One of the other Latin, I'm going to show these pictures because I think they're so great. This is a Frank Lloyd Wright house.
Actually, it's a Lloyd Wright house.
A Lloyd Wright.
Yeah, Frank Lloyd Wright's son.
Right.
And the house is still standing. It's in Los Feliz Hills.
And he lived here?
Yes, he lived there in the 1930s.
And then this picture down here, I think it's great because Gilbert Roland was a fabulous Latin star as well, right?
Yes, but he lasted much longer than Navarro, though. He lasted for like 50 years.
Maybe because he was married.
Perhaps, perhaps.
He was married to he was a great tennis player, Gilbert Roland.
He was.
And his wife was a tennis player, I think.
I know he was married to Constance Bennett.
Yeah, but later, way until in his 80s.
I see.
And then this picture, I think, is great.
Yeah, it's Navarro and a friend at the beach.
So is this like a beginning of where his gay life would show up?
No, because this picture was not publicized. It was not published anywhere in the 1920s or 1930s. This came, from a private collector. This was just a photograph for Navarro and his friends.
So you found it?
Yes, by luck.
Oh, by luck. So what actually then, how did his career succeed?
He had Rex Ingram, who was a very big director in the 1920s, backing him up. And Rex Ingram used him in 5 different films. And that made turned Navarro into a star. And after Ingram left for Europe, Navarro had MGM behind him.
I see.
And he could sing. So when Talkies came, he became a big musical star.
I see.
And he was very talented, and he was very ambitious.
He was ambitious.
Oh, very ambitious, yes.
He had didn't he have another director then, a great director? Who else?
Well, he worked for different people like Ernst Lubitsch and Fred Niblo, who in the 20s was a big name. He's completely forgotten now.
I remember Fred Niblo had big films.
Yes, and W.S. Van Dyke, who was also a big name in the 20s and 30s. So quite a few.
And Ben-Hur, he was in Ben-Hur?
Yes, that was his most important role, directed by Fred Niblo.
Oh, Fred Niblo. Oh,
yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yes, and it was shot in Italy, but it was a very convoluted production, and they had to shoot it down. And they came to California to finish shooting the film because it was just getting too expensive, out of control.
That was his biggest role? Or
That was his most famous film.
Was
yes.
it?
It was the most expensive and the most successful silent film production ever made.
So here he was in the big star of this, big star of Rex Ingram, and he is the big bachelor. He has his bachelorhood questioned all the time, I guess. Why aren't you married?
They did, it's true. But Navarro also had a lover who was a very famous publicist, Herbert Howe. And Herbert Howe was a publicist and a film magazine writer. And Herbert Howe would come up with all sorts of excuses for Navarro's bachelorhood.
Which were?
Navarro was devoted to his family. You know, Navarro, his mother and his father and his 10 siblings with whom he lived.
Is that right?
Oh, yes. So
then when did he ever go with Howard?
Herbert Howe had a house in Beverly Hills.
Excuse me.
Yes. And Navarro would go to Herbert Howe's place.
I see.
And sometimes Herbert Howe would be invited to the house, too.
Because he worked for him.
Yes, exactly. So it was a very good excuse. But that was one excuse for Navarro not to have a girlfriend. And also, Herbert Howe used to portray Navarro as this mystical Mexican who wanted to become a priest. So
he always had an aura about him.
Exactly. So girls
did he admit to it? He obviously, now that you say he had a boyfriend, he did admit to himself that he was gay, so he wasn't hiding it from himself.
No, as far as I know, Navarro did not have a problem with being gay in the 1920s. He was able to compartmentalize his life. Okay, my gay life here, my family life here, my religion here, my career here.
So we all do have to do things like that.
Yes, the problem is, as he grew older, he wasn't able to keep those compartments standing, and that's when things began falling apart. He began drinking a lot.
Yes, he did. That's what I was going to ask, if this gayness drove him to drink.
I don't think he was just the fact that he was gay. I think that didn't help. But he had a brother who was 23 who died of cancer. And around the same time, he and Herbert Howe split up. He tried to become an opera singer. That failed. So it was a number of things happening at the same time, and I believe that that's when Navarro began drinking, and that's when those compartments began crumbling.
That's so interesting, and you did so much research. It's almost 400 pages.
Well, it was 5 years off and on working on this book.
Would you do it again? Would you do a project this big?
Well, I could do it, but not for 5 years. Something that could take maybe 2 years a year, yes.
Did you talk to a lot of living people? Or did you have
those
to do
who
it
are
all?
still around?
Yeah.
You know,
did
there
you
aren't that
find?
many. Yes, but I found some. Yes.
And did they remember him?
Yes. I talked to Anita Page, for example, who was Navarro's leading lady back in 1929. Yeah, and she talked a little bit about him. And I spoke with Miriam Marsh, who was Navarro's leading lady in the 1938 film, A Desperate Adventure. We talked on the phone. And she remembered very well, you know, making the movie with Navarro. So yeah.
Was it very exciting for you to unfold all these things?
It was. It was like going after a mystery and trying to understand who this very complex person was.
Did you learn to like him a lot when you finished, or did you have a resentment of him, or how did you feel?
Mixed feelings. He was a very complex person, so some things about Navarro I very much admire. Other things I'm not too crazy about.
Well, we're crazy. We're really crazy that you came today, because I've been reading through this, and I'm so happy that you came and explained a lot of it to me. And thank you very much, Andre Soares.
Thank you for having me here.
Thank you. And don't go away. We'll be back with Deanna Hamro, who has a lot of great stories for us and some beautiful jewelry. Excellent. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with jewelry designer Deanna Hamro, who was raised in a big Baptist family near the beach in San Clemente, California. Her surfing days led to modeling in Europe, which led to jewelry designing, which was sold at Bergdorf's, Barney's, Maxfield's, and a lot of specialty shops. But that wasn't so easy, was it? It wasn't the way it all got started. There was a big drama at 16, Deanna. The big drama. What was the big drama?
Well, I decided to run away from home with all my surfing buddies to Mexico with Timothy Leary and the Brotherhood and a whole crew of surfers. And
that must have killed your family.
Pretty much. They almost killed me for doing it.
At 16, you left San Clemente and off you went?
Yes, I went and threw my stereo and all my albums and a couple bathing suits in a bag and hid out while my mother took my brothers and sisters to swimming lessons.
Why did you?
Because it was very oppressive at that point, you know, to be raised in this Baptist, very Orthodox Baptist, you know, family, and all I wanted to do was be on the beach with my friends surfing and laying in the sun and smoking pot. I don't know. I just wanted to.
That was pretty gutsy. That was at the time when all the surfers in San Clemente and San Onofre were all eating like horse meat to show that they were very out there.
My first boyfriend was the world champion surfer at the time, and my dad made me wait like 2 years before I could go out with him. So he broke up with me, and then once I could go out with him, not being escorted by or supervised by anybody, then he looked me up again, and we went back out again.
You then you modeled. You came back to California,
Yes.
finished school, and then
Yes.
you went to model in Europe.
Yes.
And
yes.
who were you modeling with? And you stayed there for quite a while.
Yes, well, actually, I was living in Madrid for a while. I lived in Milan. I lived in San Francisco and modeled. Did some modeling in Mexico, in Panama. Just kind of wherever I wanted to go, I'd just pick up a modeling agency there and work.
And then after you finished modeling, or was it during your modeling career that you decided to design?
Well, I always loved fashion. My maternal grandparents immigrated from Holland. I'm half Dutch. And my grandfather was the leading tailor for men's slacks in Los Angeles.
Oh,
so
is that right?
They'd go to one place and have an Italian man would make all the suit jackets, and then my grandfather would make all of the slacks.
Did he have a shop, or
yes,
did they know?
It was on Wilshire. I don't know the name of it. I don't remember it anymore. But he had his shop, and all the oil company presidents and Sinatra and everybody would go there and get their slacks made.
How cool!
So all of us kids, all we cared about were clothes and cars. You know, we wanted. So basically, when I was 3, I learned how to knit. By age 5, I was sewing on a sewing machine, and at about age 11, there was a little small boutique that was down the street from my house, and the woman who owned the boutique offered me $1 per pair of earrings if I would assemble these kind of hippie glass and filigree earrings and things. So I did that.
So you were already designing jewelry early on. But when you were in Mexico, you were designing leather pieces.
Yes, yes. Actually, what I had done is I had a friend that had come down, and he had just finished at the Fashion Institute here in Los Angeles.
Did you go to fashion school?
No, I didn't.
You never did. So did you go to? I'm going to diverse. Did you go to a gemology school?
Actually, I did, but only recently, and it was I was not on campus. It was off campus. But they gave me. They said, "Well, try to do a lesson every couple of weeks." It was with GIA, and I said, "Well, you know what? Okay, let's do it." And
but you were already a famous designer by that time.
Well, I
right?
wanted to learn about fine gemstones and things, and I had a real knack of picking the right stones in the first place.
Right.
So I bought this equipment and signed up for the course and got all of the materials and everything. I started in the first weekend. I did eight lessons, 8 chapters, and 8 tests, and got 100% on the first time. I'm like, you know what? You need to be a student whose parents are supporting you to sit around and do stuff like this. So I kind of just ditched that off to the side, didn't get the degree. And
so it did. So I'm taking you back now. So you didn't go to fashion school, but your friend was at FID, Fashion Institute.
So he came down to Mexico with these amazing leather clothes. It was Abel Villarreal.
Oh, I know Abel.
Abel. So Abel went down there also with, gosh, and I forget his friend too, is also now a well-known photographer. Anyway, they came down. And I loved these clothes so much. They had fish scales coming off of them, which were actually made out of fishing lures. And so he had put this leather, these pieces together for graduation, I think it was. So I was working down there modeling. My girlfriend from Texas, who was Miss Texas, was the editor of Vogue. So we just did like 10 pages in Vogue. And then I said, hey, you know what? Let me see if I can manufacture this stuff down here. And I started to do that, and then I realized what I really enjoyed was just playing with the stuff that went on the leather. So I did some leather accessories, and from that I segued into paper mache jewelry, and then
paper mache in Mexico?
No, actually I came back to the States.
Because that was a real influence, isn't it? Paper mache and the Mexican sensibility.
Definitely, yes.
Oh, so that's so. Were you painting the paper mache?
Yes, I went into a hobby store and I saw this powdered paper mache, and I thought, oh, that's kind of cool. So I started making little shapes with it, and then I went to a foundry where I actually asked them, well, how do you guys, how do you cast these big items? And they said, well, we have rubber molds and blah, blah, blah. And I said, well, can you make some little ones for me? And I had some stars and some moons and some hearts, and they did. And I pushed the paper mache in, mixed it with glue, and pushed in the powder, and then I'd set Swarovski crystals in and paint them.
Oh, you did at that time?
And the first year, I did $250,000 of jewelry sales.
And you were like in your late 20s.
Yes. Yeah.
That's so great. And then the faux jewelry turned into.
Eventually, it turned into fine jewelry, but I did the.
But this is faux right
yes,
now.
this is very much a Chanel inspired.
I have my pillow to put these on.
It's actually a double looped necklace, but this actually it's kind of interesting. 'Cause I started out with this paper mache jewelry, and then I went ahead and was doing models and casting and everything in my studio, and then I decided I wanted to do glass, to put inlaid glass into my jewelry. So I traveled to Venice, and I used to have them make glass for me in Murano in Italy.
But that's not this.
We figured out how to make our own glass. We tracked down a professor who had passed away.
This is glass? These are glass?
Yes, and it's just the way Grappois makes the finer Chanel jewelry.
Oh, how great.
So I figured out through a widow whose husband used to make glass doll's eyes. And showed us the equipment that he used, and it took us a couple years, but we finally figured out how to make our own glass cabochons.
Are these glass?
Everything. These are all glass too, and these are inlaid into these copper
You don't make these anymore?
No, I don't, but they are available in vintage on some vintage websites.
They're so
here and there,
beautiful.
Collectors.
And this?
That's a belt. I actually, when I was doing my costume jewelry, it was very popular
I'm just
to have.
hold it up like this so you can just see it.
It was very popular to have boutiques, so in-store boutiques. So like Chanel had them, and Isabel Canovas, Dominique Orientis, and stuff. So I ended up making belts and evening bags, evening wraps, and.
Oh, look at this.
This piece is very interesting. This piece actually was selected, and it traveled around the world for 2 years to different museums on a jewelry tour that was sponsored by Swarovski.
So you use their crystals?
This is glass, which is so crazy. So they asked me as the only American female designer to please if they can use this cuff. So it traveled around the world, and they actually opened up the county museum for me because I was like a local hometown girl made good, and they're like, wait, we'll open the museum. The show's almost over, and I went in and saw it there.
This is wonderful because this is this could be a brooch.
Right. Or a necklace.
Exactly. And it was taken to Rome by a really good friend of ours, Mario Tamayo.
That's correct.
And the Pope blessed it?
That's correct.
I think that's so great. That's the first time I heard that story. I want to get into your gems.
Okay.
So once you've started, how did you get into gems once you finished with your faux jewelry, which is so strong?
Right. Well, I really felt like at the beginning of the 90s that people didn't really want to have such large jewelry anymore. The fashion had pared down and everything. And also I felt that this is expensive jewelry. I was competing with Chanel and with the better quality of Chanel that Grappois did in Paris. And so these necklaces and these pieces would go for $4,000 or $5,000 in the store. And I started to see people with small earrings that they wanted to wear and things that they'd wear all the time and wouldn't take off. So I decided to leave it, even though it was very successful, and start in with silver, sterling silver, and 18-karat gold, and I went from that and freshwater pearls into then finer jewelry of 18 and 20 karat.
Which is this?
This is a ruby cabochon, and those are all rose-cut and old mine-cut diamonds that are set into a snake brooch.
Well, we have the camera. I was going to show this too because this is very fine.
These are Burmese spinel and grape garnets, and these are necklaces that I designed that wrap 3 times around the neck or 6 times around the wrist.
Spinel is a fine stone, isn't it?
Yes, it is. In fact, the Ballas ruby that's in one of the crown jewels is actually a spinel. It's not a ruby.
You have another chain.
Yeah, these are more of the same design again. This is green sapphire.
But
Sorry
little
about the
tiny
tag.
beads, are they strung?
They're all strung and hand knotted. And some of them are graduated, color graduated, and also graduated for their size. These particular ones don't happen to be. The spinel is graduated a bit. And these are South Sea Keishi pearls, which are naturally occurring pearls.
Hold those
that
up
are not
against you.
seeded.
Maybe he can get that. This camera, maybe.
I got you.
Oh, you got it? Those are beautiful.
Then I'm wearing some.
Oh, yeah,
It's hidden under my mop hair of
let's look
hair.
at those. Pull your hair back because those are very interesting. They're little spirals.
These are spirals, and these are all, I don't know if you can see past my
We
elbows
can
and
see
everything.
those, yeah.
These are spirals that are all done in different colors of diamonds: orange, burnt orange, greens, canary yellows, cognacs, and then the briolets that go around them again are in some of the same colors.
Beautiful. Those are very fine.
Yes,
Do you
these
work
are
at
very
the bench?
I know how to work at the bench. I taught myself how to work at the bench. So I realized after a while I couldn't keep doing that because I wanted to design, and I mean it's very, very laborsome to be at the bench.
Do you go to different places to buy your stones? Or do people come to you?
I would go to shows. I had my vendors that I would purchase things from, and I would take opportunities when if I was traveling and I found something that I really loved. I have some other diamonds on also that go with, that kind of match with these. This is a flexible ring.
Oh,
And this is
great.
set with about 7 carats of diamonds here.
And this I want to show before we leave.
This is an
because I
interesting
think this
piece.
is a really beautiful cuff.
And it's got a bit of a story like everything else about me, but I had gone around, I really wanted somebody to make things by hand, and I didn't want to, have to travel to and from India or Indonesia or anything. So I went to Little India over in Cerritos, and I finally got this guy to make this bracelet, but it was a nightmare. It took like 3 months of going back and forth, but that's completely handmade in
This
20
is
karat gold.
beautiful.
And then that's kunzite in the middle and pink sapphires.
Oh, it's beautiful. What are your favorite? We don't have much time. Just really quickly, what are your favorite stones?
I love colored diamonds. I love off-colored stones. They're not pure color.
With weird names,
Yes.
like kunzite.
Kunzite, apatite, spinel. I love spinels. I love mandarin garnet, which is an orange stone.
That's a great one.
I used to use a lot of tourmalines, and now I use a lot of sapphires.
Well,
Color.
That's how we were today, and your things were in vogue. We had those on the set, and we want to thank Deanna Hamro for coming on today.
Thank you
and
for
thank
having
you
me.
for watching. And keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 917. Thanks.
Thank you.